you should never bend and rotate. Oh, do you want to record that?
You're good, you're on.
Okay. Who's heard that you should never bend and twist at the same time when you're lifting something? Everybody here? You heard? So this is on my side. I should never reach down, grab it, and stand right back up with it. Okay? So that's a pretty common phrase out there. Oh, I hurt my back because I twisted and bent over. And it doesn't really flow with our model that that's how we injure ourselves. And here's why. If I am capable of bending and lifting with 230 pounds, or I'm capable of bending and lifting 115 pounds 20 times, then it doesn't stand to reason that doing 4 bend and twists to get this marker would injure me. It doesn't stand that just doing that once, oh, I just caught myself there and I injured my disc, that was the end of it. That's not how the body works. The body works in, if you exceed your capacity by doing 255 when you're only capable of 230, that's when we actually have a problem. So, if I have somebody who comes in who is only capable of bending and twisting and lifting 10 pounds, I have to have them do 8 pounds 10 times. Their body responds to that by getting a little better the next time. I then have them do 12 pounds 8 times. Their body responds to that, gets a little better the next time, and so on and so forth, until they're capable of 230 for 20 times. Does that make sense? So the bend and twist, what they talk about are the mechanics of the disc. That when you twist and bend, it creates a shear force in the disc. Basically, we have bony segmental blocks, and then we have squishy little discs in between there. So I have my bony block, I have my intervertebral disc in between, I have another bony block, just like so. So sitting in here are a bunch of fibers that all go in one direction. Then slightly deeper to that are a bunch of protein fibers that go the other direction, and the other direction, and the other direction, and the other direction, back and forth. And so those crisscrossing protein fibers hold in the center of what we call the nucleus, or a little mucus-like substance that acts like a shock absorber and a nutrient transporter through the center. And so what they say is when you twist in one direction, what you do is you slacken those fibers going one way, and you tension the fibers going in the other way. So you can see that if I twist, one are going to shorten and the other are going to lengthen as I go. And so what happens is you basically tear the ones that are getting lengthened, and then you have no support from the ones that are getting shortened. Is that clear to everybody? So we've got these fibers in here that basically if I always go in the same direction, they get broken. Now, our body responds to those breakages by building denser and greater amounts of those fibers in that direction later on that night when you go home and go to bed. And so if I have somebody who's capable of lifting 10 pounds 10 times, and I have them do 8 pounds, let's say 15 times, their body's going to go home and they're going to say, boy, that was really close to our limit. We've got to be ready for that the next time. And so instead of the 50 million fibers here, they're going to increase up to 60 million fibers. And so now I have 60 million fibers going in that same direction in all of my intervertebral discs. And so then when I use about 50 million of them, it's going to say, boy, that was really close, we better go up to 80 million. And we go back and forth until we have 600 million fibers capable of supporting us, which means if I break a couple million of them, it doesn't really matter. Is that clear to everybody? So let's say we have a client in the gym. The best way to strengthen this is what we've been doing with single arm suitcase deadlifts, where that weight is on the side and they stand and pick it up, or one arm sumo deadlifts where it's right between the legs. In both, there's this rotational component, rotation, counter-rotational component. You'll notice that for people to get all the way down there, there will be a little bit of a twist side to side, which is totally okay. They'll get stronger around that and start to balance out how much twist they actually have there. So if I zoom out here a little bit, I've got my bony blocks coming down. I then have my sacrum at the bottom. I then have my pelvis coming off. Just like so. So here's the pelvis, here's the sacrum at the bottom, here's the spine coming up through. This is the 12th, 11th, 10th rib, just like so. I've got small muscles that come off the sacrum, and they go in this orientation to the 5th, the bottom lumbar vertebrae. They come up to the 4th, they come up to the 3rd, they come up to the 2nd, so on and so forth. So they're going up in that direction. On the opposite side, coming off here, I then have muscles that come up and attach to the 12th rib, the 11th rib, the 10th rib, just like so. These fibers on the left-hand side of the low back and the right-hand side of the mid-back work in conjunction to coordinate that counter-rotational pull. So as I bend and twist, as I'm going, so the weight is in my left hand here. As I go down and I bend and I twist, those muscles are having to lengthen. Then they have to shorten to pull me back up to an upright posture. I go down, they lengthen, they shorten, they lengthen, they shorten. So if I'm doing suitcase deadlifts on my left-hand side and I say, boy, I'm starting to feel it over here, those are the spinal erectors working to shorten. And so they're saying, boy, I feel it over here, that's okay. They work to the limit, they check their range of motion. If they're not super tight, they haven't taxed it enough, and we're okay, we can keep going. If they're doing it on their left-hand side, they say, boy, I feel it on the left-hand side of my low back. Those are the intrinsic muscles, the small muscles right alongside of the spine they're working, okay? So it's okay for a client to say, I feel it either on the left-hand side or the right-hand side when they're doing a one-arm lift, because there's, on opposite sides of the spine, muscles helping both directions there. So if I'm holding it on my right-hand side, I've got the equivalent muscles coming up just like so, and up. So these are called the intrinsic, these are called the extrinsic spinal muscles. Does that make sense to everyone? So we create a little rotation of the disc. After we rotate the disc a little bit, these muscles come to tension, these muscles come to tension, and they help counter-rotate it as we stand up. They go into length, they come into shortening. If we do that within our tolerance, over time our body will respond by getting stronger and be capable of handling that more and more. So if somebody said, I hurt myself because I bent and twisted, it has nothing to do with the bend and twist. It has everything to do with them doing more bending and twisting than what they're capable of. So they need to do a little bit less on a more consistent basis, they'll get better at that. So let's say we have somebody come in and they've got osteophyte formation, okay, also known as arthritis on the sides of their vertebrae. Basically what this means is they've repeatedly twisted and sheared that disc back and forth, but haven't totally let it recover. And so we've pulled some of the bony part, some of the connective tissue off of the bone. Your body has reactively grown bone underneath because we haven't used, or we've overused that joint basically. So we've got multiple segments all the way up and down through. So if this one is overused, that often means that this one, this one, this one, this one are likely underused. And so if I have osteophyte formation here, I basically overuse that joint. And so when I've bent and twisted, instead of using all of my spine, I've only used a small amount of it. And so we've got this osteophyte formation here. We then have a narrowing of the disc space. You'll often hear people say, oh, I've got like a bone on bone, or my disc is smaller than it should be. That's basically the wearing away of those fibers, not holding the nucleus in the center. That mucus starts to work its way to the outside, the disc shrinks. So if I have somebody come in who has that situation, oftentimes the initial recommendation is to not move. And this is because they've done a whole lot of bending and twisting. And so they've bent and twisted and bent and twisted, and they've been so close to their limit for so long that it becomes painful. That bending and twisting sends signals to their brain, hey, you're going to create more pain, you're going to create more damage, you need to stop that. And so when they go in to see whoever the therapist is that's checking them out, they're going to see that this hurts. That therapist is going to say, oh, don't do that movement, that's what's damaging you. And so now that person has, for the last 10 years, not bent and twisted whatsoever. And they've been perfectly neutral and never done anything wrong, except their back still hurts. And if they ever don't pay attention, they strain themselves. oh, well, I wasn't paying attention for this 2 minutes. I grabbed the grocery bag and then I felt it. So I've got this person that did this a lot. This got painful. They stayed away from it. They were told by a professional to stay away from it. They did that for 10 years. Now they're incredibly weak over here because they never used it. And as soon as they go into that position, they create a problem. What do we have to do? We can't get them to continue avoiding it. We have to get them to properly go into that direction in that position. And if I have x-rays or MRIs that show these degenerative changes here, oftentimes the advice is don't move that, that's already damaged. Don't help that, we need to remain perfectly stable. Well, they say that discs don't heal, and it's because there's no direct blood supply to it. So it's not correct that discs don't heal, it's correct that they heal very slowly. And they heal very slowly because there is no direct blood supply. But they heal even slower if we don't move them, because fluid still has to get in. There are active living cells inside the bone. There's active living cells inside the cartilage, and there are little cells that make all those little protein fibers in there that help build this up. And that gets its nutrients through fluid from the surrounding tissue. So I have blood vessels all around the disc that the blood comes outside of those vessels. And when I squeeze and release the disc, guess what happens? It sucks in like a sponge. I squeeze, I push out the old fluid, I suction it back out, and it pulls new fluid in. I squeeze, it pushes out the old fluid, I open it back up, and it pulls the new fluid back in. So if I take this situation and I never use my spine in that direction, guess what I'm doing? I'm stopping that pumping of fluid. And so I've got those blood vessels that are all around it that are there waiting in the wings to actually help put some fluid in there. But because we think discs don't heal, and because we are told don't move because it's painful, then all of a sudden we slow the healing process and we keep that person in a chronic situation for a long, long time. So what do we have to do? We have to get it moving. We have to listen to pain in order to judge how far we go. But if this situation has been chronic for a long enough period of time, we also want to listen to what the body is telling us, not just the mind. And so our brain can start to think any sensation down there is problematic. That's why we've been using the biofeedback, because people's brains will tell them that it's a problem, but physically they're still okay to keep going. As soon as that person starts to approach their limit, they're going to get a stiffening of the tissues. And so when they go to bend forward, they're going to feel that that's actually tighter. When they hang there, their muscles will contract and restrict that. And it'll do that for as long as it takes to recover. So that person bends forward, no problem. They do a set of tough 15 reps. They then bend forward again. Now it's tighter. Take a little rest. Now I've recovered. Now I get another set of 10. I do a couple of sets of that. When I go home that night, eat a good meal, get a good night's sleep, I come back. 2 or 3 days later, I can do twice as more. I'm more stress tolerant. Now they felt painful the whole time, but now they're capable of handling twice as much load because we listened to the body instead of just the brain. We did what the body needed, and that person has started to reduce their 10-year chronic back pain. Questions on any of this?